All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone out there in probably from all over the world, because we know we have a couple of amazing authors joining us here tonight from hugely different parts of the world. And I am so grateful to be with you this evening. My name is Lori Barber. I am Anderson's Bookshop's education director, and I am thrilled that you have taken time out of your very busy day to join us this evening. As an independent bookshop, we know that you have so many choices as to where you get your book fix, and we can't tell you how grateful we are that you choose us to do so. Anderson's Bookshop is excited to continue to be able to bring you amazing authors virtually and sometimes hopefully in person as we try to dip our toe back into those waters. And on that note, just a quick plug for a couple of upcoming events. Tomorrow we have Brene Brown's virtual book launch. On Monday, we have Alda P. Dobbs virtual chat on our Anderson's AB Teens Instagram Live. Next week, we also have an event with Ann Patchett, a very special virtual event with Michael J. Fox, who is in conversation with Willie Geist. Renee Adia is joining us next Wednesday. And then in a couple of weeks, on Tuesday, the 14th, we are joined by the wonderful Sharon Draper. So those are just a few events that are coming up for us at the shop. And speaking of incredible authors, I am so pleased to introduce tonight's author, the incredible Eoin Colfer. He is here tonight in conversation with Ridley Pearson. Ridley is the award-winning author of multiple adventure series for youngish readers, including our favorite, The Kingdom Keepers, The Steel Trap, and with Dave Barry, Peter and the Starcatchers. Ridley is also a best-selling crime novelist of more than 25 titles. He was the first U.S. citizen to be awarded the Raymond Chandler Fulbright Fellowship in Detective Fiction at Oxford University.
Holy moly, I didn't know that.
Right, I thought you might be interested in that. As a full-time dad and husband, Ridley, along with his wife, live with their two teenage daughters in Missouri. And of course, not to be outdone, the amazing Eoin Colfer is the author of the New York Times best-selling Artemis Fowl series, which has been adapted into a major motion picture from Disney.
Woo!
Yes, and 3 books in a spin-off series about our favorite Fowl twins. He also wrote the critically acclaimed Warp trilogy and so many other titles for young readers and adults, including, ready? High Fire, Iron Man, The Gauntlet, Airman, Half Moon Investigations, Eoin Colfer's Legend of Books, The Wish List, Benny and Omar, and Benny and Babe. In 2014, he was named Ireland's laureate for children's literature, and he lives with his wife.
Goosebumps.
I know, isn't that amazing?
Wow.
He lives with his wife and 2 sons in Dublin, Ireland, and you can visit him at his site, owencolfer.com. He's all over the internet. I just saw him on Twitter today, also at Eoin Colfer. Welcome, the two of you. We are so grateful.
Thank you.
You're here.
I feel we should stop now, really, because that was really good. We
Do you
sound
have
great.
a laurel wreath for your
We
laureate?
sound fantastic. We do. We should just give it up now, because
Yeah,
it's
we're
just
done.
going to get worse. What was
I'm
that Oxford
impressed.
thing?
I got goosebumps with the Irish children's laureate. Oh my goodness. I had no idea.
Yeah,
I'm
that
gonna
was
get
fun
off of
for
here now.
me. I was ever since John Cheska got some kind of laureate thing in the US, I thought to myself, if Cheska can do it, I can do it.
So you lobbied hard for that one.
I
didn't you?
lobbied hard. I lobbied
Good.
hard. And my slogan was, I'm not John Cheska. So,
That'll get you anywhere.
hope he doesn't see this now. He'll never forget. Tell me about the Oxford thing. What's that all about? I didn't know about that. Did you go to Oxford?
The Fulbright? Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I was in Oxford for a year with it. It was kind of a weird deal. I think it was cool. The Raymond Chandler estate, rather than putting up a statue somewhere, decided to push a bunch of money to the Fulbright organization and said, let's get an exchange of scholars back and forth. And so I was lucky enough to be the first guy to go from America to Oxford. And then British crime writers started coming from Oxford to America.
Yeah.
Some really prominent names. So it lasted about 3 or 4 years, and it was just terrific. Really amazing.
I often wanted to ask you, we've talked a lot over the years, but you were such a massive, or you still are such a massive crime writer. Why did you decide then to jump into the young people's books from such
I saw how successful you were. That's all it took. I said,
I thought,
look at
I
what
thought Dave
Owen's
Barry
doing
had
here.
some blackmail.
No, I mean, don't
material.
you? I mean, I could ask you the same thing. Don't you think it
Yeah.
has a lot to do with having kids?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it absolutely does. I think for me, it was because I was teaching at the time, and I was teaching that age group.
Ah,
And so
wow.
I had kind of people, I had just a way into the mindset. And the
Yep.
older I get, the harder I find to get into that mindset, because my
Uh-huh.
kids are older now too.
Yeah.
So I really miss the events that we used to do live, and where we would mess around with the kids, and they would make jokes, we would make jokes, and you just
I
get
know.
to feel like a kid again.
Yeah. So
But this
fun.
is the closest I suppose we can get to that.
You
'cause
and
we
Rick
are two big
Riordan, huh?
kids.
Both of you came out of teaching and then writing for kids.
I know. I remember when Rick started, and I was going, "Oh, fair play, he's trying his best."
Fair play.
I wish him luck. Not that
So
much luck. That's too much
Full
luck. That's too much
disclosure
luck.
here is that you and I are colleagues and longtime friends.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm a huge fan. I think you know that. So I've
That's
read
mutual.
nearly everything you've read. I'm only 2/3 of the way through Get What They Deserve. So
it's
don't
fine.
give me any spoilers.
Yeah, I won't ask you any questions. What
Because
happens in the
I'm
last
hanging
chapter?
on things, but I am absolutely, I wrote Seal at Disney about this a week or
Yeah.
two ago, how much I'm loving the book. It's just,
Oh, good. Well, you're
uh,
very kind.
you know, one of the things that impresses and amazes me, and then I'll stop gushing, but is that you ask a lot of your readers. I mean, you write really beautifully, and you write really sophisticated sentences and compound sentences. And it's I mean, any adult will love these books as much as the kids. And it's really impressive. I mean, what's always gotten me about you is just the beauty of your writing, because a lot of us, I mean, I certainly am not a beautiful writer, but I can tell a fun story. But you do a fun story, and you tell it really eloquently.
Well, I disagree about you not being a beautiful writer, because I think you come from the style of beautiful spare prose, you know, that just, and maybe that comes from coming out of the crime writer tradition. I think I love your writing, you know.
Yeah, well, you're kind, but it is very spare compared to, I mean,
but that's kind of my, like, the flowery thing is the Fowl thing. I wouldn't do that in every book. I think if I'm doing the crime stuff, it's very, I would be trying to emulate the way you do it. But this,
well, you wrote differently in the crime novel I read.
Yeah.
And I loved that book. What was the title of that one? That was like an adult book.
There was Plugged and Screwed. So there was two about a private, not a private eye, he was a bouncer, about a doorman.
Okay.
So that was fun. I'd like to go back to that actually, because
it was very good. The one I read was really good.
Well, thank you.
And now that you mention it, I mean, it's been so long, and I can't really remember last week, but I'm sure you're right about the prose. I didn't realize that you sort of did that intentionally in the Fowl series. It's so fun. I mean, do you write poetry on the side?
No,
I mean, do you goof around with that?
I think those characters kind of call for gothic, overblown prose, and I think it works really well. And if you get into the rhythm of reading it, I think you can really enjoy you know, the fun I'm having. And what you said earlier about adults loving it, I think that sometimes that happens, but I'd like to really not underestimate the kids and what they can
that's right.
at the age of 12. I think you'd be the same, really. And I think they will read up, and kids it makes them feel smart and grown up if they can read what they would consider something that's just a little bit too tough for them.
And your books make us smarter. I mean, you're not afraid to use a high vocabulary, and yet it's accessible. And I think you're making kids smarter. I think it's really terrific.
I have to thank my editor, Stephanie, because she always encourages me to not to pare it back, and, you know, to go for it. And I suppose if I go too far, Steph will pull it back, but usually she's up for the adventure with me, so she's fantastic.
Well, I can see why. It's so fun. So tell us, I want to get into sort of Owen the writer in a minute, but tell us a little about Artemis. And Artemis's life, and why you jumped to Artemis's twins.
I felt it was a tough decision, because I've been doing Artemis for so long, since, I mean, the first time I met you would have been when the first book came out. We met in New York at BEA, and that would have been in 2001. So since I've been working on Artemis since about 98, and then after 8 books and 3 or 4 graphic novels and a movie and video games and whatever, it's pretty much like you and Dave. You know, you were working away on the Peter and the Starcatcher books and for a long time, but there comes a time when you feel this character has arrived where I wanted them to arrive. And if I do another one, I'm really just kind of cheating my audience who went on the journey with Artemis and me. And we reached the end of that journey. We had a satisfying conclusion. And then I'm just saying, well, let's just do one more. And it just didn't feel right. And so I decided to step away from it. And I really worried about that, because when I finished it, about 3 months later, I went out on tour. And because it was the last one, all the publishers wanted a tour. So I spent about a year touring around. And everywhere I went, the kids were saying, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Yes. Don't do that. And I very nearly cracked. I very nearly said, you know what? There's so many people out there who want another book. I'm going to do one. But then I decided not to. And I got some really harsh comments. I remember this kid came up to me and just pointed at me like, you know, like a witch out of Shakespeare and said, you destroyed my childhood. When you finished that last Artemis Fowl book. So, but you just, at the same time, it's so wonderful to feel like you've earned that place. That we all have that bookshelf. Like we all have a lot of bookshelves, but we all have that bookshelf where we keep the books that really mean something to us. And I've got one, and it's not that one because that's all my books. But and when you find that you're on that shelf in people's house and their hearts, that for me, that is really special. And
nothing like
now
it.
That Artemis is there, and now that, you know, the Kingdom Keepers is there, that's forever. And I think you would agree with me 100%, Ridley, that is a very special thing for writers to hear from readers.
Very much.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing about, you were mentioning 12-year-olds, is that, and this comes really from writing mysteries for adults too, is it's just, they're such amazing readers. Yeah. They read these things 2, 3, 5, 7 times. So you have to, the books have to be right spot on, or they're going to send you emails saying, do you know on page 37, you know, Ralph took off his shirt and then he put on a sweater and he never had a sweater, you know, I mean, you just, they are unforgiving. And yet when they do read them 5 and 7 times, they know. And I understand the kid who came up and pointed at you, because they become friends to us as readers. You know, Artemis is a friend, and then it's suddenly like you can't see your friend anymore. All you can do is look back in a photo album and see those 8 other times you were with him. And it's you feel punished somehow. So I get it. But,
I completely understand. But I understand it when it's about other writers. You know, you don't really think of yourself affecting people like that. So it is nice. It is nice when you find out that you do, but it's hard to come to grips with it, because like you, like all of us writers, we spend most of our time on our own in an office, agonizing over the smallest detail and the smallest sentence, the shortest sentence. So we're not 100% connected. And meanwhile, the world is going on, and all these readers who are reading our books are communicating with each other and swapping books and having a community. But weirdly, the writers aren't. I'm not moaning, poor me, but we're not in that community. So when I go out on tour, which we haven't done in a couple of years, it's so wonderful just to realize that the love of books and reading is just alive and well. And every time I hear people saying that the books are dying, I just think it's hilarious, because if for anything, they seem to be just getting stronger and stronger, and more people are reading. And so I don't think books will ever die out. And it's just gratifying to me to have a little tiny slice of that history, and just to be in there
Yes.
somewhere. And if writers, Irish children's writers are mentioned, I'll probably be mentioned along with those now, which I think is fantastic. I really would like a framed photo of me in the airport. That's my goal. I want my family to have to go to the airport to get away from me and then see a picture of me in the airport.
That's very funny. And there's stores like Anderson's, that have been on my radar for 20 years now. And
Yeah,
I'm
me
sure
too.
yours too. And they're just the coolest experiences, because at least for Kingdom Keepers, they put up a bunch of chairs and those get filled, and then people stand around the bookshelves and everybody asks questions, and it feels like a family. And I'm sure that's with Artemis. I mean, you have an Artemis family around the world, but bless the independent bookstores for supporting us and bringing us in and sort of welcoming back that family once a year to share the books with us.
Well, you do feel, I mean, I've been going to Anderson's again since 2001. It was my first time.
Too.
And, I've signed the wall, and, I've had the chairs put up and gone in the back and spent hours signing books for everybody. But you just feel it. It's almost like a respite when you're on the road and you're in between hotels and airports.
Exactly.
And then you just get into Anderson's. You just feel like, oh, I can relax now, because whatever happens on this tour, I'm going to have a great 2 or 3 hours here. It's going to be like, exactly like you said, it's like going home to a family. And then you get to know the staff a little bit. And there, it's not like a normal staff, they're just, it's like a bunch of friends got together and decided to run a bookstore. It's fantastic. So I wish I could be there in person.
One time.
Yeah.
In the middle of a tour. And they said, you look starving. Let's go out to lunch. And we ran out around the corner and went to lunch. And they told me about a book that I said, so what's the book you all think is going to really hit? They said, well, there's this book called Twilight. We just have this feeling it's going to do really well. And I went, Twilight, well, I think they were right. By the way.
I think I heard
it
of
did
that.
Okay.
I think it caused a few ripples, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, what I'm taking away from that is you got lunch. They brought you out for lunch.
I did get lunch.
Laurie, what's this all about, Laurie? I don't remember being brought out for
Owen
lunch.
wants lunch, Laurie.
Come visit. We'll buy you lunch.
Yeah,
Uber Eats.
You heard that. That's a verbal contract, Ridley. I'm getting lunch next time.
Okay, you're getting lunch next time. I haven't gotten it since, mind you, and that when Twilight came out. So maybe we could share a pizza sometime.
You must have said something, Ridley. You must have said something.
So when you were early on as a writer, did you ever were you ever helped along by a mentor, either in your writing or in order to get published, or what was that early, like you came out of teaching, you said, so give us a thumbnail of how that ended up Eoin Colfer, the bestseller.
I always wanted to write. I think that a lot of writers just feel it almost a compulsion to write. It's not like they decide to write. It's just they are writing and they think, oh, I'm writing a story. And you don't realize that when you're reading all these books, what you're doing is research and study, because it's so enjoyable. But like most writers, I was a voracious reader, and I remember I used to keep books as a child in every room of the house, because I had this nightmare that there would be an earthquake and I would be stuck in a room and so I needed to have a book. Now, I probably should have thought about water and food and maybe spare underpants, but all I thought about was I'll have to have a book. So I would have books.
Incredible.
Yeah, hidden behind the cistern in the bathroom. And I'd have a book, and once I read the books a few times, I would swap them out with other books. And I bet a lot of people are like that. So, but what I was really doing was researching for being a writer. And I started with comic books. I started drawing my own comic books. And I remember inventing a couple of characters. That there was one guy I invented. He was called, I invented a guy called, and you may have heard of this character, really, the Karate Kid, which was then cruelly ripped off.
Well done.
I know. I didn't.
Your house must have gotten broken into at some point.
My brain must have got burgled. But my Karate Kid was suspiciously like Batman. He was like a rich, his parents were killed and he was a billionaire, so it wasn't really a good one. And then my next guy was it was called Supernova. And then there was a super. So I thought, what is going on here? But the main thing was I was a terrible artist. So that's why so I dropped the art and just kept on with the stories. And when I was a teenager, I wrote plays for the local group. Wow. And then
had you read plays before you wrote plays?
Yes, because that's how I learned to read. My mom was an amateur actress, award-winning, and so I would do her lines with her. So she would have her lines, and then I would do all the other parts. And if there's a better way to learn how to read,
oh
Ridley,
my gosh, that's it.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I was 4 or 5, and I was doing all the parts in a play.
Oh my gosh.
So, and I think that was probably the turning point for me. And I still remember that very fondly. And I think that was a huge advantage. And so I went to school and I was able to read. And not only that, but I was able to do English accents from the plays. So I was made.
I always say that being a writer is mostly being an actor, that you have to embody all these different characters. They're all going to seem the same.
Yeah,
you have to switch roles. You had quite the head start if you were doing that from 5, 6, or 7.
Absolutely. And that went on, I'd say, until I was 12 or 13.
Wow.
And we would do all the classic plays. So I kind of had an idea of how a play should work. And I wrote plays until I was about 30. And then Jackie and I got jobs in Saudi Arabia, teaching for a year.
Seriously?
And yeah. We got jobs over in Saudi Arabia, and we wanted to save money to get the deposit for a house. We were just married, and they didn't. Of course, you couldn't do plays there. There was no theater. Right. So I said, well, what I'll do is I'll write a crime novel, and I wrote that, and it didn't happen. Didn't work. But I got the bug for writing novels. So we moved then to Tunisia in North Africa. And while I was there, we were there for 2 years. And while I was there, I realized that there was kind of a shanty town outside the village we lived in. It was a walled village. And the local kids used to play football with the Scottish kids and the Irish kids. And to the kids, that's what was important. And I thought there's a story in there. And that's where I wrote my first book that got published, which was called Benny and Omar, about an Irish kid and a Tunisian kid who kind of literally climbed the wall and breached the barriers and become best friends. So, but that was happening. I mean, that was a gift as well. I mean, I was getting up in the morning and looking out the window, and there was inspiration like flowing in. And because I wasn't from North Africa, I could really see the beauty of it. I wasn't jaded, and also I was very privileged in that I had enough food to eat and I had enough water to drink. So I was able to watch the landscape and not have to worry about surviving that day. So it's a real privileged. Now, obviously, we did a lot of work with the locals, but at the same time, we were never hungry, and we were never thirsty. So it was a very privileged way to spend those 2 years, even though we were, doing our best to help out.
Who was looking at that first novel and then Omar and Ben?
Well, who was when I was writing it? Nobody. I was starting off incredibly secretive, and I'd never tell Jackie what I was working on. She knew I was writing a book.
I'm going into the closet. I'll see you in 4 hours.
My setup was incredibly. I was so happy. I had notebooks, like we all spiral notebooks, no computer. I had a plastic lawn table for one, those tiny little ones, and a plastic chair. And I just sat in the corner of the living room. It must have been like a specter of some kind. And I was just furiously scribbling, and I would have my headphones on. I'd be listening to the Beatles or David Bowie or something, and writing this story. And I think Jackie thought she'd lost me for a while because she didn't really know what was happening. But and then when I went back to Ireland, we went back because Jackie was expecting Finn. So this would be 25 years ago. I sent that book to one publisher in Ireland, and they took it, like the first publisher. And I thought,
Oh
wow.
gosh.
Now this is, I had submitted 4 books before this to 100 publishers, and not a nibble,
So
nothing.
not to agents or anything, straight to the publishers.
Straight to the publishers.
Okay.
But it wasn't until Artemis then that Jackie sat me down and said, "You're spending all your time writing, and you're selling 1,000 copies, maybe. You need to get an agent if you want it," because we had a baby. Jackie had a business. I was also working full time, so something was going to give, and it would have had to be the writing, because literally you can't tell the baby, "Sorry, kid, I'm writing a book." So
Well, you could.
you could, but it
You'd
doesn't
just be
go down
divorced in 5 minutes. So that's,
So I got an agent, Sophie, and she just turned everything around. And the first book I sent her was Artemis Fowl, and then
oh,
it seemed to go bananas. Then from there,
Yeah,
it just
went bananas.
literally
Yeah.
took off in about 3 months. In 3 months, I had left teaching. I was writing full time, and then 6 more months I was touring the world. So she changed my life.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and I was lucky to
That's
land
fantastic.
like you did with Disney Hyperion, and they've just been fabulous for the past
They're
20
the
years.
best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, Andersons as well have been also fantastic. And
So you're right.
someday lunch, someday I'm going to get that
Someday
lunch.
lunch. Yeah.
Lunch is happening.
Lunch is happening.
Oh, it's happening. You write Artemis, you decide to continue the series because you want to continue the series. How do you come up with 12-year-olds who have PhDs? I could sit here in this office, Owen, for many, many weeks, and I couldn't come up with 12-year-olds with PhDs.
Well, I saw a photo of my brother, and I've told this story many times. My younger brother, whose name is Donal, not Donald, Donal. There's only one D. And he, in Ireland, we make our first Holy Communion, like many countries, but it's quite formal here. It was in the 70s, it was very formal. And the boys had to wear like a wedding suit. It was like a dark suit with a tie, and it was very serious, and the photos were serious. And I saw a picture of my brother Donal, and there was actually 2 photos. And in one, he was on his own in the garden. And I just thought to myself, wow, he looks like he's a James Bond villain, and he's only 12. And I thought that's not a bad idea. If you had like a 10 or 12-year-old kid and he's actually this super villain, that is good. Now there's a lot of kid super villains around now, I've noticed, but at the time there kind of weren't. And
right. No, there were none. Yeah.
So I thought that's a nice idea. And where could I go with that? And what would he do? And I thought, well, if he's a child and he's this genius, he would also have this childlike belief in magic. And if you lived in Ireland, you would believe in leprechauns, and you would believe that they have a crock of gold. So I thought, if you were a 12-year-old or 10-year-old, that's who you'd go after, because you'd be old enough, young enough to believe in leprechauns, but then clever enough to exploit them. But I really didn't think anyone would buy that, because it's so nasty. It's such a terrible kid. And I thought,
and we all love him.
Yeah, this is probably not going to be. But I think people saw that beneath it all, he really had a kind of a heart of gold, even if it took him eight books to get there.
And did the fairy world then come out of the leprechauns?
Yeah.
This fairy world is wild.
Well, what I was just looking at the word, that all happened in one day. I remember I like wordplay, and I was looking at the word leprechaun, and I thought, yeah, what can I do to update this and make it like more 20th century or 21st century as it became. And I thought, well, if you look at the word leprechaun and you break it down phonetically, it's recon. So that's LEP. That sounds like a police force, like, NYPD or LAPD. So LEP, what could that be? And first of all, I said lower earth police. I said, no, I can't have lower earth. Like, there's already middle earth.
Yeah,
so right. I thought, what about lower elements police? And then recon is obviously reconnaissance. And I thought, oh my God, that's like LEP recon. Surely someone has thought of this before. So I went on whatever the Stone Age version of Google was, and Google Rock, and then no one, it didn't register. So I immediately got going on that story, And I was terrified that I'm going to get halfway through this, and then some guy called Ridley Pearson in the States is going to bang out a book about LEP
Left
recon,
recon.
and I'll be done with. But no, I got through it, and then once I had the first book out, then it was mine, and I managed to. But the second book, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, Ridley, but once I had the first book done, the second book I found very difficult in a series, in my first series, because I felt the first book did so well. It was almost like, how did I do that? What did I do, and how do you do it again? And
you can't try to. That's the bummer. Yeah.
Well, that's because people ask me, what's the secret? And if I knew the secret, I would just do that all the time. But you don't.
I got really lucky because with Kingdom Keepers, it was really to be one book.
Yeah.
Wendy Lefcon, just sort of said, can you write a thriller set in our parks?
Yeah.
But nobody can get hurt. You've got to think of some way to make this non-violent and all of that. And I finally came up with the holograms, but it was just one book. And so when they came back 3 years, I think it was later, and 2 or 3 years later, and said, could you write a second book? I went, what, a second book?
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, yeah, there are a lot of other parks in Disney World. I'll just move it to another park,
Yeah.
So
I had
a little easier
idea.
time of that because it was, I could use setting as a thing. You
and you're doing another one, Darn. You've got one in March, isn't that right?
I am. It's a brand new redo because, like you, I had reached. I mean, I just love the Kingdom Keepers, and I have many characters, so I probably could have gone on with them forever. But I got a bunch of emails, and they were. There's this phrase in younger people called ships, which is relationships.
Oh, ships.
And so they were looking at all the ships in the books of who liked whom and why and all this.
Oh, yeah.
And they would write and say, are they ever going to get married? And I got many emails asking me if these guys were going to get married and those guys. And suddenly I went, what if these guys had kids?
Yeah.
And so I'm writing a series called Inheritance, where we're really focused on the kids of the Kingdom Keepers. And it's a blast. I'm having so much fun. And it's new characters for me. So it's really a thrill.
Well,
that's what maybe actually subliminally I got it in the twins.
Well, I was
going to say
the twins are the same thing.
You gave me that idea.
It's like the next generation. And you do it is liberating, isn't it? You can
gosh.
You can go crazy and just have as much fun as you want to have. And it's a new thing, but you're still in the same world. So it's so much fun. Yeah.
Well, and Beckett and Miles are so different. Yeah. I mean, it's great that they're twins and sort of polar opposites.
Yeah. Well, tell me about Lazuli. Where'd she come from? Well, I wanted to have someone who was not really qualified to look after these guys. We're like with Holly Short or Captain Short. She was a captain. She was, in a way, she was the moral compass at the center of those books. Whatever she did was the right thing to do. And even though Artemis fought with her quite a lot, he respected her totally.
Right.
But poor Lazuli is just on a training mission. She's still a cadet, more or less, or a specialist, as they're called. And she just gets ensnared with Miles and Beckett. And the next thing,
I just adore her.
Yeah. She's what I like about her is she's so moral, she's so fresh, and she's a real cop, she wants to do some good. And then who she saddled with the craziest two humans in Ireland, and that's saying something, because a lot of craziness over here. And
she could be a great series lead character. She just really had me from the word go.
Well, that's a real compliment. I appreciate that, and I love writing her.
And you do it really well.
And the twins then are kind of based on my own boys, who are not twins or even boys anymore. They're men, but I remember them when they were little, and because they're so opposite, even though they were born, I don't know what your guys are like, but I have two boys, like born in the same hospital, the same parents. They even wore a lot of the same baby clothes that were handed down. And yet they're completely and utterly different, different.
You wonder how that happens.
And you're just like, how does that happen? And that personality emerges really early, like within weeks, you can see this is a quiet baby.
Absolutely agree.
This is a loud baby. And if they're in the same room together, there's drama just because they're different. So it makes it so easy for me in any situation to have them both, Miles and Beckett, there, because they have their own drama going on, which to them is more important than the 100 warplanes approaching them, you know, about to drop bombs on
No,
them.
they're
It's
in an
like
argument. They're about to get bombed. Right.
yeah, they're arguing over, you know, Beckett's tie, or, you know, where's your
It's
underpants
so
or
great.
whatever. And
It's
it's
so true too.
it's a slightly younger, I think it's aimed slightly younger than the Artemis books. It's a bit wilder and it's a bit more gothic, but it's a lot of fun, and I had, it's been a great couple of years writing these books, so I really
Oh,
enjoy
I
it.
just can't even imagine. I wrote a couple graphic novels for DC Comics.
And Super
And
Son, they're fantastic. I love
Well,
those.
thanks. I would try to put, you know, amusing or double entendre names in them.
Yeah.
And then you know, I read through the twins books and, you know, bleed them dry. I can't even read the page because I just start laughing out loud. And all your acronyms, I use acronyms, but I know how clever you are, but it seems like you must have to spend days on some of these acronyms because they're so spot on, like nanny and some of those.
Yeah.
Is
My
that
favorite
just pure
acronym.
joy when you're doing that?
Oh, I do. And I spend, like, for a grown man, I spend an inordinate amount of time on acronyms. And I set myself a challenge once that I wanted acronym to be an acronym for something. And I thought that's the ultimate. If I can get the society that is chasing the fairies into the word acronym, I will. And the only way I could do it had to be in Spanish because I couldn't get it to work. The YM at the end, I couldn't. So YM had to be E Magica, which is An Magic.
E Magica.
So it was a bit of a cheat, but I was still quite happy with that. But I'd say that took me about a week, really.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. Yeah, the things we spend time on.
I know.
I did all this research for the Kingdom Keepers. It may not seem it, but I did all this research for the Kingdom Keepers, and now I've had to rewrite them, and some of them get in copy edit, and then the copy editors will come back and sort of ask, now on this page, how did you come to this? And I go, wait, that was 12 years ago, and I have to recreate that research. So I dig through these files, and I go, does this help? You know, it's crazy that
you traveled a lot for those books, so didn't you?
I did. I've been inside the parks over 30 times. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
I mean, people might think, I remember talking to you at the time, and people might think, wow, that's the best job ever. But actually, that's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. It's fun work, but it's hours and hours and hours of work. And I'm just so blessed to have so many people be willing to share their knowledge and the history of the parks and things with me. Without that, I've got nothing, you know, but they give me huge amounts of their time, and all they get is some idiot they're with for 5 hours in a park. You know, I mean, I don't know how they keep letting me do this, but it's sure fun.
I think a lot of people are very glad. What is your book count now? How many? I know that's a very kind of basic question. Do you know how many?
I mean, books? I did 7 of the first Kingdom Keepers series, and then I wanted to go back and look at Disneyland on the opening day because there's so much myth in the and true weird stories. So I did 3 books about the Kingdom Keepers at Disneyland in opening day. They're called Kingdom Keepers Return, and now I'm doing, so that was 10, and now I'm doing the 3 of the Inheritance books. And that'll probably be it. But what a fun ride. I just have the most fun doing this.
You do.
So in Twins Get What They Deserve, we move from set piece to set piece to set piece to set piece. I want to say it's very fast, except the writing is eloquent and not rushed at all.
Yeah.
But is that, do you know that's what you're going to do? And I'm so impressed by the set pieces because I'm a set piece writer, but I honestly, I don't write them like you do. And they're sort of brilliant set pieces. And I wonder, is that an intentional thing you're doing? Have you laid that out? Do you stumble into these? How does that go for you when you start this?
Well, it's a mixture of all those, but I usually do have a plan, and I do like a set piece, and then building towards that and then deconstructing it. But always in every book I would say I've ever done, I come to this real stumbling block about 2/3 of the way in, which I'm actually in at the moment. And I just feel like this book is, I can't do this book. I don't know how I'm going to get from this set piece to that set piece. I made a big mistake starting this, but now I've been on it for 6 months. I don't know if you ever feel like that, but and I always resolve it, and I know I'll resolve it this time, but you just feel like it's inevitable, and now that I know it's coming, it always does arrive. So that's when I have to come up with a big
So you mean
idea.
just sort of inspiration solves it?
Yeah, and it
Wow.
just comes, it usually doesn't come in a big firework. It
Uh-huh.
just, it's almost like a drip, drip, drip. And then one day you realize, oh yeah, okay, that's enough. I can do that. And but it's never a big, oh my gosh, eureka moment. It's just a little thing, and before you know it, you feel a little better for a few days in a row. So I think it's more of a mood thing really than a lack of ideas. I mean, the ideas are there. I'm just feeling a bit down, and it just takes me a few days of hiking or long walks or down by the seaside and getting some fresh
walks
air.
are amazing for writers.
Yeah,
Get
I'm
my
started
ideas out
to.
walking.
I've started to. I have I suppose all phones have got a voice note thing on them, and I just whenever I'm walking, I'm just send myself a voice note, and it's the weirdest things because you come
I've
back
got like
and
100 on my phone. I just use that constantly now.
yeah, it's great. And then if you're walking on a pier, there's a lot of wind, and then you listen to the voice note. It's kind of green fairy, cannibal, magic tail. You're like, what? What does that mean? So
I have no clue what I meant.
Yeah.
I just spent the weekend with Dave Barry and his family, and he was exactly on your schedule. He was 6 months into writing a novel, and he'd reached about the 2/3 point. And at dinner, he said, "So I hit a complete brick wall about 3 weeks ago, and I was just panicked that I was never going to solve it." And he said, I went back and I started thinking and looking and thinking, and all of a sudden, just what you said, drip by drip, this thing fit together, and I knew exactly where it was going. And thank goodness, because for a moment there, I thought I'd just wasted 6 months of my life. So I guess we all do this.
At least Dave knows what the first two words of the title are. Dave Barry's.
That's very funny. So
don't tell him I said that.
I'm not sure. We've only got a couple minutes here before we get.
Is Laurie going to come back in and ask?
She is. But before we do that, hi Laurie. I'm not sure your readers know the arc of Artemis becoming what I thought was fabulous film. But it wasn't like Disney had decided 2 years earlier to make a film and they got Kenneth Branagh and made this amazing film. So maybe you could give us a thumbnail on just how hard it is and how long it takes and the steps involved to get a book into a film.
Well, they bought the rights before the book came out. So in 2020, they bought it from the first draft of the manuscript. So this was before it had been edited or and they assured me, I mean, not the book people, but I met with the movie people and they were like, yo, this is going straight into production, straight into production. I was like, yes. They said, buy yourself a tuxedo because you're going to a movie launch. And I was like, oh, yes. And Jack and I, we
Miramax, right?
It was Disney Miramax.
Yeah.
And we thought this is it. This is going to happen. And I met the first couple of directors. I met a guy called Gil Keenan, and he's kind of coming back now because he wrote the new Ghostbusters movie. But he just directed a movie called City of Amber, I think, which was a wonderful movie with a very young Saoirse Ronan. So I thought this, and Monster House he did. I don't know if you remember Monster House.
Oh, yeah.
A great animation. So he would have been absolutely ideal, but between one thing and another, that didn't work. And they said, don't worry. We got another guy, and there was another guy, and then about 5 directors later, I'd been over to Hollywood a few times to meet the new people, and every time I was like a little puppy. Yeah, they're making it. But after about 15 years, I thought, okay,
15 years, people.
I finally gave up, and I just kind of pushed it to one side and thought if it happens, it happens. And, I'm just got to concentrate on the books. And right. It's like they say, when you're not looking for it, it seemed that as soon as I gave up on it, that Kenneth Branagh called me and said, will you be in London? and I met him, and he said, "Listen, I'm
I
not
will
doing
be
it
there
this
tomorrow
year."
morning, actually.
I said, "I'm on my way, Kenneth."
Yes, I'm in the
So
airport.
he was lovely, and he said, I can't do it this year. I'm doing theater, but I'd love to do it next year." And
Wow.
again, I kind of said, "Yeah, okay, lovely, thanks, that's great. I'm sure you would really like to do it, but I know what this world is like now, and it's not gonna." I didn't say any of that. I just thought it.
Yeah.
And then a year later, I started getting paintings and drawings and scripts, and they had hired people and cast people, and it all happened quite quickly in the end.
What a production.
And I was lucky that it got onto Disney Plus, and it's doing really well there, and people seem to like it. So,
It's incredible.
but the best bit for me, the best bit, bar none, was going on the set with my family and my boys. You know what kids are like, Ridley. I know your kids are lovely, but they do tend to have a distinct lack of respect for their parents, especially if those parents have gray haired and beard, Ridley. Like some people in this on this Zoom.
Yes.
And but you go on a Disney movie set, and that set is based on your dad's book. You got to have respect, at least while you're on
at
the
least
set.
for an hour and a half.
At least for, I think I got about 90 minutes. That's about right.
I think that's about the limit.
And after that, they were like vibrating.
When's dinner?
Yeah. They have to ask Laurie about lunch, because apparently she's the lady.
So are we going to see any more of the twins, and are we going to see a second movie, or is any of that kind of thing in the works?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay.
At the moment, my schedule is, I'll have to talk to Steph about that, but I have something new in the works.
Oh,
which
good.
I hope to, which I think is pretty interesting. And it's time for me to take my hiatus from the Fowl family.
Okay.
I've been working with leprechauns so long now. Apparently, legally, I cannot serve on a jury.
Well, we'll turn it over to Laurie. Thank you.
Thanks,
Owen.
Ridley.
It's really fun.
Thank you so much, Ridley. One of the questions actually was, is there any chance of a second film? Jeffrey wanted to know that. So thanks for the heads up on that.
Thanks for opening that wound, Jeffrey.
We will remain hopeful, because it's such a wonderful world to be in, actually.
I think, yeah, maybe there might be when things open up again, we'll see what happens.
I think that's part of it, is people are very, very cautious with the pandemic.
But a lot of my other stuff is being looked at. High Fire is
also filmable.
Nicolas Cage is attached to play the dragon, so that should be fun if that goes ahead. And I think that's with I forget which one of the big TV studios has that. And so there's a few things that you never know, but it's such the world. You can never say it's a sure thing. I mean, I didn't believe they were going to make Artemis until I was sitting in a theater watching it. And even then I thought this was a joke. But my real goal would be to do like Ridley did, and get a musical play on Broadway. Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh.
If I could do that. I mean, for me, I couldn't believe I was sitting beside Ridley, looking at the guy who wrote the book, and this, this Tony-winning play, this amazing piece of art was up there on the stage. It was what a moment that was. And Ridley bought me a beer. So what a night.
What a night.
Sounds like a perfect night.
So if there's any producers out there, that I've got like $5 million to spare, I would do a reasonable job for that.
You've got some good connections, though, I think.
I do. I'll get working on it.
Ladies and gentlemen who are out here in Zoom land, who have joined us this evening, we have a couple of questions already that I'll ask, but if you do have questions for Eoin, he is here for about 8 more minutes, and we would love to answer whatever questions you have. Maddie would like to know, Eoin, how do you go about developing characters in your books?
That's a really tough one. I think Ridley would agree that, and we were actually talking about this earlier before the cameras went on. You have to kind of nail down who that character is, and then only do things that are true to that character. So one of the things I used to do when I was younger, when I was starting out, one of the boo-boos I used to make was I used to not base the characters on anybody, and they all would become me. So and that gets a little bit boring. So you have to have an idea if you can, who that person is and what they would do and what they would say. And then you've got to follow, you have to be faithful to that. So I hate if I'm watching a movie and then in the last few minutes, the character does something completely out of character. And it just destroys the movie for me, because that's a cheat. And that's obviously just been done to tie everything up. But it's not faithful, and it does not reward your audience who have spent all that time with you. And there's been a few big movies lately that have been really guilty of that, and TV series.
Really guilty.
Too. Yeah, and I think that's really cheap shot,
Oh.
So if you're gonna have a character that is a certain way, they've got to be true to that. And so you need to set that out earlier on in your plan. What kind of person is this? And I'm one of these old-fashioned people who will, draw a little picture and do arrows out and say what kind of person this is and what they would do and where they come from and what's their motivations. And what the important thing to ask yourself, if it's a lead character, is what does this person want? And what are they prepared to do to get that thing? And what laws will they break or what will they not break? And then a lot of the book writes itself, because you know what the character is going to do. So you follow them down the road. Would you agree with that, Ridley?
Absolutely brilliant. Yep. Edward Albee, what do they want?
Yeah, what do they want? Yeah. Lunch is the answer, Laurie.
Lunch is always the answer.
Lunch is the answer.
One of the things that I was actually curious about is whether or not for both of you, we always hear about the plotters and the pantsers. Are you a fly by the seat of your pants guys when you're writing? And this is a fantastic question, what does your writing process look like? Rough drafts, or do you outline? How does it work for both of you?
I think I'm a bit of a mixture. I do fly a lot by the seat of my pants. I'm glad to find out that's what pantser means. I wasn't sure. So that's much better than what I thought. But so I do a very small plot, a plan about 2 pages, and then I just go. And definitely most of it comes to me while I'm working. I get all my good ideas while I'm actually working. I know someone said, the harder I work, the luckier I get. And it's the same with writers. The more I write, the more ideas I have. So I think it gets your brain going. So I get about a 2-page of a plan. And then after that, I just go. Ridley, what would you say?
Oh, I'm completely type A. Last year, Owen, I wrote a 150-page outline and submitted it. It took me like 7 months, and I submitted it to 2 publishers, and they both turned it down. And I said, why do I spend all my time doing this? But that's just how I roll. So yeah,
you got to do what you do. I mean, you have
I know you do it the way you do it. Yeah, my way is to, I don't, it's not even that I stay with it, but I've got it. I know where it's going. I know how I'm getting there. I'm very interested in character arc. So I want to make sure I can get somebody through a logical character arc. I find that very hard to do if I don't have it somewhat planned. But by the time I finish my first draft, I put it all up on my wall. I do new cards for my outline. And it's nothing like what I had planned. And then I rearrange everything and rewrite it. So it actually never ends up like the outline, but I have an outline to kind of hold on so I don't get terrified that I'm never going to finish this thing.
It's like a safety net. Yeah, absolutely.
It is. It's a safety net.
Love that. Jeffrey would love to know, Owen, any thoughts as to what Mulch Diggums is up to these days?
Well, Mulch Diggums, for those of you who don't know, is the hyper-flatulent criminal. I was going to say cat burglar, but dwarf burglar, who ventures up from underneath the ground and he steals stuff from humans. I did think he might flip and become a private detective. I thought that could be funny. So that was an idea I had, that Mulch would open, because he was working with Holly for a brief period, kind of as a freelancer. So I thought it might be funny if, with his particular gifts, he would, a very good noir, black and white fairy book would be Mulch Diggums' PI. So that's I think that's, for a while he was stealing Academy Awards just for kicks. So he might go back to that, but he might do BAFTAs. Or Ridley better watch out if he's doing Tonys, I think, because I believe he's connected to a few Tonys. So he could be coming for your statues, Ridley Pearson.
I have a lightning round to end here with. Are you ready for this, Owen? You can give me at most 1 sentence.
Okay.
Most challenging book you've ever written.
The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Like
Most
a legacy book.
unexpected outcome of your career as a writer.
I think being asked, like, to write for a guy who writes books about farting leprechauns, to be asked to be the children's laureate, that was quite surprising.
The book or story we never saw, but that you liked or about writing.
Oh yeah, I did a comic book with Andrew Donkin and Giovanni Regano about a Templar knight who was immortal, and it's only like 10 pages long, and there was only 500 copies of it ever made.
Wow.
And I'm really proud of that. I have it here somewhere.
Wow.
But I've given away very few of those because I only have a few left. But
Yeah.
I'm really happy. I must show it to you sometime, really.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. Your role model growing up, other than Dave Barry.
Well, other than Dave Barry, I think he was already past his prime when I was a child. He's a very, very old man. So he was I think I was very lucky in that my dad was my role model because he was a writer and a teacher. And I kind of aspired to be that. He said to me, get your job teaching, and then you can write in the summer holidays. And that's exactly what I did. So my dad was a great guy, and I was lucky to have him for as long as I did.
That's beautiful. And from father to son, what does Finn and your other son think of your success?
Well, I think that it kind of enables them to have the lifestyle that they want. No, they're very proud of me. Like Irish men were kind of very stoic and also cynical, which is an unusual blend. And we would tell each other we love each other with headlocks. You know, we put each other in a headlock, and that's, just if you don't squeeze too hard, that's a good thing. And so, but they occasionally, I remember when the boys saw the movie, we were in a theater in London, and we went to see a screening, and it's hard to watch because all the stars were there and the director. But Sean, my younger son, just at the end of the movie, he just patted my shoulder, and I could see he was quite emotional, and that was lovely. Like, it was one of these for an Irishman, we usually don't say anything until we've just had our third heart attack, and we just go, I love you, and then we go. So it was nice. It was a lovely moment.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That was more than one sentence. Sorry.
No, that was great.
But when you're talking about your kids, more than one sentence is warranted.
Okay, good. Nice. Thank you, Laurie.
Well, I wanted to say thank you so much to both of you for joining us this evening, to both Eoin Colfer and Ridley Pearson. What a joy to spend an evening with the two of you. The Fowl twins get what they deserve. The third book in the Fowl Twin series is in stores now. I, of course, am going to put a link to Anderson's right in the chat for you. So if you haven't purchased one, you absolutely can. We have some signed copies for you. We are so grateful for the two of you to have spent the evening with us.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Laurie. And thank you, Ridley. It's so nice to come.
Thank you, Laurie. What fun.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Hours.
Have a great night.
Thanks, everyone. See you soon.
See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye. See you tomorrow.